Why do men sometimes obsess over women they barely even know? It's not always about beauty. It's not even about chemistry. Often the answer lies in something deeper, a mystery they feel, but can't explain. You see, Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the modern era, believed that feminine energy isn't just something emotional or visible. It's something unconscious. It lives beneath the surface, in the symbolic, in the unspoken, in the energy that lingers after someone leaves the room. In this video, we're going to explore what Jung called the magnetic power of feminine mystery, a force that doesn't chase attention, but commands it. A kind of presence that doesn't try to be understood. And precisely because of that, becomes unforgettable. Have you ever met someone who said very little, yet stayed on your mind for days? Someone who didn't reveal everything, but in their quiet, you sensed depth, wisdom, and something you couldn't quite name. That's what we're diving into. Because this kind of energy doesn't just attract, it awakens. It stirs something inside others that's often unconscious, old wounds, hidden desires, unresolved projections. And that's where shadow work comes in. Jung taught that what we don't face within ourselves, our shadow often shows up in our relationships. And sometimes we're drawn to people, not because of who they are, but because they reflect a part of us we've never really met. So in this video, we'll look at how feminine mystery interacts with the male psyche, how the unconscious gets projected onto others, and why some women leave an emotional imprint that lingers long after the moment has passed. If you've ever wondered why certain connections feel magnetic, even haunting this journey might reveal more about you than you expect. Let's begin with one of Carl Jung's most fascinating and, frankly, most overlooked ideas, the anima, the inner feminine image that lives inside every man. Now I know what you might be thinking. How can a man carry a feminine image inside himself? But this isn't about gender roles. It's about psychological wholeness, and Jung believed we all carry both masculine and feminine energies within our unconscious minds. For men, the feminine side of the psyche is called the anima. And according to Jung, it plays a powerful role in shaping not just how a man relates to women, but how he experiences emotion, creativity, intuition, and love. You see, the anima isn't just some abstract idea. It's a deeply emotional, symbolic presence that forms early in life. It's built through a man's earliest experiences with the feminine, often starting with his mother or the women closest to him as a child. But over time, it becomes something more, a symbolic blueprint of what feminine means to him emotionally, spiritually, and unconsciously. Here's where it gets really interesting. When a man meets a woman who seems to embody the qualities of his anima, and this can be entirely unconscious, he may feel an intense magnetic attraction. Not just physical, not even intellectual. It's something deeper. Something that feels almost sacred. As if she's not just a person, but a key to something lost inside him. And that's when the projection begins. Instead of truly seeing her for who she is, he overlays her with all the unconscious emotions, needs, and fantasies he's placed into his anima over the years. She becomes the one, the muse, the emotional ideal. Now this can feel incredibly romantic, even mystical at first. But Jung warned this kind of projection is powerful and potentially dangerous. Why? Because when we fall in love with a projection, we're not loving the actual person. We're loving a mirror of our own inner world. And when the real woman doesn't live up to that fantasy, because no one can, we often feel disillusioned, betrayed, or deeply confused. Have you ever seen someone fall hard for a person they barely knew? Talk about them like they're perfect, magical, irreplaceable. Even though they've only shared a few conversations, that's likely not love. That's the anima in action. Jung believed that the only way to have truly healthy conscious relationships is to recognize this dynamic and work with it, not be ruled by it. So what does that look like in real life? For men, it means asking, am I drawn to this person because of who she is, or because of how she makes me feel about myself? Am I open to discovering who she truly is, or am I clinging to the version of her that lives in my imagination? And for women, it's a reminder that when a man seems inexplicably drawn to you, especially early on, it might not be you he's connecting to. It might be the part of himself you reflect. This isn't about blame. It's about awareness. Because when you understand the anima, you begin to see that many of our deepest connections aren't random, they're revealing. They show us what we long for, what we fear, what we've forgotten. They expose the wounds we carry and the parts of ourselves we haven't yet reclaimed. So the next time someone tells you they just can't stop thinking about her, maybe ask, is it her you can't forget? Or is it the version of yourself she helped you touch, if only for a moment? Because when a woman unknowingly activates the anima, she can awaken something profound in a man's soul, something that goes far beyond romance. She becomes a symbol of what he's missing, and perhaps of what he's finally ready to find within himself. Let's talk about mystery. Not the kind you read in novels or see in a thriller movie, but the kind that lingers in the presence of another person. The kind that doesn't speak loudly, but speaks to something inside you, without words. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious mind is deeply drawn to what it can't fully understand. And that's what makes mystery so powerful. Because here's the paradox: we fear the unknown, but we're also fascinated by it. There's something deeply human about wanting to fill in the blanks, to decode the silence, to find meaning where none is given. And when it comes to relationships, especially the early stages, this plays out in very real ways. Take, for example, a woman who doesn't overshare. She doesn't rush to reveal her past, her pain, or even her full personality right away. She's not cold, but she's self-contained. There's an emotional stillness in her, a kind of depth that can't be accessed in the first few moments. For many men, this presence can feel magnetic, not because she's being distant or playing hard to get, but because her mystery activates the imagination. And imagination is where projection begins. See, when someone doesn't tell us who they are, outright our unconscious mind starts doing the work for them. We begin to fill in the missing pieces with ideas, fantasies, hopes, and fears. And often we project onto that person not who they are, but who we need them to be. That's what Jung called emotional projection, and it happens in the unconscious space that mystery creates. This is why men often say things like, I don't know why I'm so drawn to her. There's just something about her. Or I can't stop thinking about her, even though I barely know her. It's not because she's done anything special. It's because she's left room for his unconscious to enter the equation. And in that space, he doesn't just meet her. He meets himself. This can be beautiful, but it can also be dangerous. Because the line between truth and fantasy gets blurry when we fall for someone we've only filled in with our own internal stories. We start to believe we're connecting when in fact, we're projecting. Now let me be clear, this isn't manipulation. Mystery, when authentic, isn't about withholding to gain control. It's about being whole without needing to explain every piece of yourself to be accepted. It's about carrying depth not for performance, but because you've built a rich inner world that doesn't need constant validation. Think about it. Have you ever had a conversation with someone who didn't rush to speak, who paused before responding, who gave weight to their silence. That kind of presence makes you lean in. It invites curiosity. It awakens your attention. And in a culture that's loud, instant, and constantly broadcasting, that kind of quiet depth stands out. Now let's flip the lens for a second. For women watching this, if you've ever wondered why you were told you were intimidating or that someone felt overwhelmed by your silence, it may not have been you. It may have been the space you created that forced them to confront what they hadn't yet faced within themselves. Because mystery is not just a romantic tool, it's a mirror. And what someone sees in that mirror often has more to do with them than with you. So what does this mean for us? It means that mystery is not about being unavailable. It's about being real. It's about allowing space for others to step into, for discovery to unfold, for depth to be earned. It's about resisting the cultural pressure to over-explain, overshare, or sell yourself to be worthy of attention. Because real connection doesn't need performance. It needs presence. And sometimes what makes someone unforgettable is not what they gave you, but what they didn't. Now let's talk about something that's both powerful and a little uncomfortable: the shadow. Carl Jung called the shadow the thing a person has no wish to be. It's the part of ourselves we've rejected, denied, or simply never dared to look at. It lives in the unconscious, and it doesn't go away just because we pretend it's not there. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Attraction isn't always about chemistry. It's not even always about the other person. Sometimes, we're drawn to someone because they represent something hidden within ourselves. This is where shadow work comes in. Shadow work is the process of making the unconscious conscious. It's about facing the parts of you that you've buried: your fears, your insecurities, your shame, your unprocessed pain. And when those parts remain unacknowledged, guess what happens? You project them, often onto people who activate them without even trying. Now let's bring this back to the idea of feminine mystery. Imagine a woman who is emotionally deep, grounded, and hard to read. She's not chaotic. She's not attention-seeking. She's simply present, but not fully open. To a man who hasn't explored his own emotional world, that kind of woman can feel like a magnet. But not necessarily for healthy reasons. Because when she doesn't give him full access, when her energy is contained and quiet, it can stir something in his shadow. Something unresolved. Maybe it's a need for validation. Maybe it's a desire for control. Maybe it's a childhood wound from not feeling seen by a mother figure, or a fear of intimacy disguised as obsession. And instead of seeing her clearly, he sees her through the lens of his unconscious. He doesn't realize it. But he's not just attracted to her. He's reacting to what she triggers inside him. This is where it gets tricky. Because if we don't recognize this dynamic, we start confusing emotional activation with love. Intensity becomes a stand-in for connection. And we chase people who press on our wounds, mistaking that pressure for passion. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a relationship that felt electric, but exhausting? Where you couldn't stop thinking about the person, even though being with them didn't actually feel peaceful or safe? That could have been a shadow connection. Because sometimes we're not looking for love. We're looking for a mirror, and the shadow loves mirrors. Here's what Jung taught: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So what looks like fate, what looks like meant to be, might actually be your shadow crying out to be acknowledged. This is why shadow work is so important, not just for healing, but for clarity. When you start to uncover your shadow, you begin to separate what's real from what's reactive. You learn to ask, Am I truly connected to this person? Or am I caught in a pattern? Do I want them for who they are or for what they represent? Am I in love? Or am I emotionally reenacting something from my past? And you begin to take ownership of your attraction, not as something that happens to you, but as something that reveals you. Now, this isn't about blaming yourself for your feelings. We're all human. We all carry shadow. But it's about becoming aware enough that your feelings don't blindly run the show. It's about noticing when the feminine mystery you're drawn to isn't just a person, but a portal to something deeper inside you. For women, watching this is powerful too. If men have ever been unusually intense around you, obsessed even, it may not have been about your actions. It may have been what you unintentionally stirred in their unconscious through your presence, your stillness, your emotional depth. And that kind of impact is no small thing. It's why some people remember you long after you've left the room. Not because of what you did, but because of what they felt in themselves when they were around you. There's a phrase I want you to sit with for a moment. Feminine energy is felt, not seen. It's not about makeup outfits or curves. It's about frequency, emotional frequency. Some of the most magnetic women I've ever known didn't try to be. They weren't loud. They didn't demand attention. They simply radiated something you couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore either. Carl Jung believed that we're not just influenced by what we consciously perceive, but by deeper, invisible forces flowing beneath the surface, especially when it comes to attraction and emotional resonance. In this sense, true feminine energy isn't something you observe. It's something you feel in your nervous system, like an emotional tuning fork that vibrates without making a sound. It might be the calm in her presence, the softness in her gaze, or the way she sits with silence, not needing to fill it. And here's where things get powerful. When a woman is connected to her own emotions, when she's grounded, aware, and authentic, she naturally emits a frequency that draws others in. Not in a performative way, but in a deeply human way. Think of it like this. We've all walked into a room where someone was trying hard to impress. Their energy feels like static, loud, scattered a bit, overwhelming. Now contrast that with someone who walks in and doesn't say much, but somehow all eyes eventually drift toward them. Why? Because energy speaks before words ever do. And feminine energy in particular speaks in a language of emotional truth. Let's go deeper. The modern world often teaches women that their power lies in being seen on screens in styles, in curated expressions of confidence. But the women who truly leave a lasting impression are often the ones who are just present, not performing, not chasing, just being. There's a phrase in psychology called emotional resonance. It describes the phenomenon of feeling affected by someone else's internal state, even when they're not expressing it overtly. Have you ever felt calm just by sitting next to someone who was deeply at peace? Or felt unsettled by someone who was smiling, but clearly anxious inside? That's emotional frequency at work. Now imagine a woman who has done her inner work, who knows her emotional landscape, her light, her shadow, her fears, her worth. She doesn't need to prove anything, because her presence already speaks volumes. That's magnetic. And it's why many men feel drawn to women they barely understand. They aren't falling for her image. They're responding to her energy field, to the way she makes them feel. Sometimes it's peace. Sometimes it's mystery. Sometimes it's a stirring of something they've never encountered before. But it always leaves an imprint. And let me be clear, this kind of magnetism isn't exclusive to romantic attraction. It's also the kind of energy that makes someone a great leader, a nurturing healer, a powerful speaker, or simply someone people trust without needing to explain why. Now let me flip the mirror for a second. If you're watching this and wondering, do I have that kind of energy? Ask yourself, am I present with my emotions, or do I run from them? Do I speak from authenticity, or do I shapeshift to fit what others want? Do I allow stillness, or do I constantly feel the need to perform? Because the truth is, we all carry feminine energy regardless of gender. But the women who embrace and embody it with intention become living reminders of something ancient and sacred. Something the modern world desperately craves, but often forgets how to name. So what's the takeaway? Feminine mystery isn't always about silence or seduction. It's about energetic depth, and that depth can't be faked. It's the difference between someone who looks confident and someone who feels confident. Someone who says they're calm versus someone who actually is. And once you start noticing it, you'll see how rare and radiant it really is. Let's explore something deeper than desire, something that goes beyond the spark of attraction, beyond chemistry, and even beyond romance. Let's talk about transformation. Because feminine energy, when embodied in its most authentic, grounded form, doesn't just catch a man's attention. It has the power to awaken his soul. Sounds dramatic, right? But it's not. Carl Jung spoke of this in terms of integration, the reconciliation of the conscious and unconscious self. And for many men, this deep inner journey begins not through logic or intellect, but through connection, through energy, through the silent influence of a woman who's in tune with her truest nature. Let me explain. When a woman lives in alignment with who she really is, not who she thinks she's supposed to be, she becomes a mirror. Not just a reflection of beauty or attraction, but a reflection of truth. Her presence can stir something ancient in a man. Not because she's trying to change him, but because she doesn't hide from herself. And when a man is around that kind of presence, something shifts. He begins to notice parts of himself he's ignored for years. Old wounds start to ache, not because she causes pain, but because she brings light to what's been buried. He starts to feel more, think more, reflect more. Sometimes this looks like falling in love, but often it's more than that. It's the beginning of an internal awakening. A man might not even understand why he's drawn to her, why he can't forget the way she looked at him, or the stillness she carried, or the fact that she listened without needing to fix anything. But deep down, something in him is shifting. And here's the thing, it's not about her doing anything. She doesn't need to be his teacher, therapist, or muse. She simply is. Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. And for many men, this journey is catalyzed by encountering feminine energy that doesn't demand control or seduce, but simply invites him to drop the mask, to feel, to face his own shadow, to meet himself fully perhaps, for the first time. Now let's be honest, this kind of awakening isn't always smooth. It can be intense, disorienting, even painful. Because when a man is confronted with truth, especially emotional or spiritual truth, his old patterns might resist. His ego might panic. He might even try to run. But the seed has already been planted. And if he's willing to stay open, to stay curious, to keep walking through the discomfort, he starts to change. Not just for her, but for himself. He begins to see life differently. He begins to love differently. And eventually, he begins to live differently. Now I want to be very clear about something. This doesn't mean a woman is responsible for fixing or healing a man. Her purpose is not to complete someone else, But when she's whole within herself, when she radiates that inner alignment, her mere presence becomes activating. It's like lighting a match in a dark room. She didn't create the fire. She didn't even build the room. She just brought light. And sometimes that's all it takes to change someone's path forever. So if you've ever felt like your energy goes unnoticed, or that your depth is too much for people to handle, I want you to know something. The right person won't just notice it. They'll be changed by it. Because this kind of energy doesn't just entertain, it elevates. It calls people to rise, to remember who they are. And when a man truly meets a woman who embodies this, he doesn't just fall in love. He falls into a deeper relationship with himself. That's the true power of feminine mystery. It doesn't just attract, it awakens. So let's take a moment to pull all of this together. We've explored how Carl Jung's concept of the anima lives within the unconscious mind of every man, and how that inner image of feminine energy can shape who we're drawn to sometimes without even realizing it. We looked at how mystery, what Jung might call an unconscious gap, pulls us in, not because it's manipulative, but because it reflects the unknown parts of ourselves. We went deeper into shadow work, how what we're attracted to may not be about the other person at all, but about healing something that's been long buried within us. We discussed how true feminine energy doesn't scream for attention, it resonates. It doesn't perform, it simply is. It speaks to our emotions not through volume, but through frequency. And finally, we saw how this mysterious, intuitive energy can act as a kind of spiritual key, unlocking a man's inner journey, helping him see parts of himself that were once hidden and inviting him toward transformation. Now here's the deeper truth. Feminine mystery isn't manipulation. It's magnetic, because it mirrors the unknown within us, the part of us we haven't yet faced, the part we might be afraid of, and maybe the part we're secretly longing to meet. So here's my question for you, one. I hope you'll really think about, have you ever been captivated by someone but couldn't quite explain why? What if that pull wasn't just about them, but about a piece of you that was trying to wake up? Let's talk about it in the comments, because I truly believe that these conversations help us not only understand others better, but understand ourselves in ways we never expected. If this video sparked something in you, go ahead and hit subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. In our next video, we'll be diving deeper into the world of emotional projection and energy dynamics in relationships. How what you feel in someone else might actually be a reflection of what's unresolved within you. Until then, thank you for watching, thank you for reflecting, and most of all, thank you for being willing to go beyond the surface.